we return to the most improbable hero of the Stoic tradition, the man who proved that the mind has no master, Epictetus. To understand his wisdom is to understand the difference between being shaped by circumstances and shaping your response to them. Born into slavery within the volatile reign of Nero, Epictetus spent his early life under external constraint. Yet he emerged as one of the clearest voices on inner freedom ever recorded. His philosophy carries a unique authority because it was not constructed in comfort. It was forged in limitation. Where many philosophies ask how to live well when life cooperates, Epictetus asked how to remain whole when it does not. His teaching is less a theory of happiness and more a manual for psychological sovereignty. At the center of his thought lies a single idea: you own your faculty of choice. The Stoics called this Prohairesis, your ability to interpret, judge, and respond. Everything else can be restricted, influenced, or removed. Your body can be harmed. Your reputation can be distorted. Your circumstances can collapse. But your judgment remains the final gatekeeper. This is what Epictetus meant by freedom in chains. He famously argued that events themselves do not disturb us. Our interpretation of them does. Pain is real. Loss is real. Limitation is real. But suffering expands or contracts depending on the story the mind tells. When his master broke his leg, the injury was unavoidable, yet the meaning of that injury was not predetermined. Between event and identity, there is space. Stoicism trains you to live inside that space. This episode explores his short but powerful handbook, the Enchiridion, a text designed not for scholars, but for practice. It reads like field instructions for daily life. What to do when criticized, when delayed, when deprived, when afraid. Its message is consistent. Distinguish what is yours from what is not. Confusion between those two categories is the root of psychological captivity. When you are distressed by another person's opinion, you have crossed that boundary. You have entered their domain and abandoned your own. In that moment, the chain is invisible but real. Epictetus reframes freedom as a boundary problem. Freedom grows when attention returns to what is yours, your actions, your judgments, your values, and shrinks when it leaks into outcomes, approval, and control over others. This creates a radical form of self-reliance. Epictetus suggests that the fastest path to freedom is not acquiring more power, but reducing dependency. If you require specific outcomes to feel okay, recognition, comfort, certainty, your emotional state becomes negotiable. But when your standard shifts toward character rather than results, stability increases. You become what he described as a person who cannot be coerced. This is the meaning behind the idea of becoming a fortress of one. Not isolation, but integrity. You still participate in relationships, ambitions, and society, but your identity is not outsourced to them. Success becomes preferable, not necessary. Failure becomes instructive, not defining. In the context of today, his warnings about attention feel almost prophetic. Our environment constantly invites reaction. Outrage cycles, comparison loops, endless commentary. Each reaction looks small, but repeated reactions shape identity. Epictetus understood that attention is agreement. What you repeatedly engage with becomes psychologically authoritative. This is where the Stoic practice known as the discipline of assent becomes essential. A thought appears, fear, anger, insecurity, and instead of automatically believing it, you pause, you examine it. You ask, is this within my control? Is this useful? Is this true? That pause is the moment freedom becomes practical rather than philosophical. Over time, this produces a quiet dignity. You react less impulsively, not because you suppress emotion, but because you evaluate it. Emotional life does not disappear. It becomes guided. You stop treating every internal signal as a command. Many thoughts are suggestions. Some are distortions. A few are guidance. Stoic practice is the skill of telling the difference. Epictetus never promised comfort. He promised resilience. His goal was not to remove difficulty, but to remove unnecessary suffering layered on top of difficulty. Life would still contain loss, injustice, unpredictability, but the secondary suffering created by resistance, comparison, and expectation could be reduced dramatically. He also reframed what imprisonment means. Most people assume they are constrained by circumstances, jobs, obligations, history, limitations. Epictetus argued that the deeper prison is misjudgment, believing that external things determine inner worth. When that belief dissolves, many invisible chains dissolve with it. The cave, in this sense, is not built from stone or technology, but from unexamined assumptions. That approval equals value, that comfort equals success, that difficulty equals failure. Epictetus challenges each of these. He suggests that freedom begins the moment you realize interpretation is optional. To exit the cave is not to escape reality, but to see it clearly. Events happen. People act. Conditions change. Your role is not to control the script, but to govern your participation in it. This is quieter than domination, but more powerful than it appears. Freedom, then, is not the absence of constraint. It is the stability of identity, regardless of constraint. The chains may exist, but they stop defining the person wearing them. That is the paradox Epictetus embodied, a man externally limited who demonstrated internal vastness. And this is why his philosophy endures. It offers something modern life rarely guarantees, a form of invincibility that does not depend on winning. When your peace depends on character rather than circumstance, fewer things can take it from you. You realize that the final authority over your experience was never external. It was interpretive. The gate was always internal. And once you see that clearly, the question changes from, how do I control life? To something far more liberating. What do I choose to become in response?